The White Sox rookies keep garnering the recognition, but let's hope these youngsters win big games and even bigger awards someday.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm Todd Welter. Welcome to Locked On White Sox, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm a lifelong Sox fan. I've been podcasting here for over a year and a half and covering the team well before then. And also I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. Well, I'm going to get to your mailbag questions and comments after I talk about where the Emmanuel Clase and Rito Ortiz pitch rigging scandal ranks relative to the 1919 Black Sox. But first, let's discuss the latest accolades the White Sox rookies racked up yesterday and the hope of some of these youngsters winning bigger awards down the road. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Well, the recognition for the White Sox rookies keep rolling in, and rookie recognition is a lot different than the accolades that established star players receive. And I want to see these rookies who came together to provide a core that the team can move forward with, obviously win those bigger awards and win more games down the road. I mean, I want to see Colson Montgomery winning the MVP, or at least consistently finishing in the top 5. I want to see Shane Smith win a Cy Young someday, or at least receive votes. I want to see Kyle Teal and maybe Edgar Carroll win a Silver Slugger. I want to see Gold Gloves and Reliever of the Year awards. But most importantly, I want to see more wins. Now, in terms of the recognition that's been coming in, Colson Montgomery's 21 homers in 71 games earned him fifth place in the AL Rookie of the Year voting. He got 1 second place vote, 5 fourth place votes, and 9 fifth place votes. He also made MLB Pipeline's All Rookie First Team at DH. Jacob Wilson, who finished second in voting, was listed as their shortstop. And I believe Josh Nelson of SoxMachine.com, he made the point on X, formerly Twitter, if you were starting an all-rookie team, defensively, you would probably actually put Montgomery at short, Wilson at DH. I mean, Wilson's defense was atrocious this year. He was a minus 10 defensive runs saved and minus 4 outs above average, where Colson was 1 defensive run saved, and at least how Fangraphs tracked it, neutral and outs above average. StatCast gave him 6 outs above average. So yeah, I'm probably going to put Colson defensively at short with what he showed in those 71 games. But I see why Pipeline had Wilson at short and Colson at DH, given Colson just has way more power. You know, Wilson had 13 home runs throughout the season. Colson had 21. And also, Nick Kurtz winning the AL Rookie of the Year. Here's the thing that happened for the Athletics. Kurtz gets the full service time and the bonus money that's afforded him, but the A's don't get the draft pick because he wasn't up in April. Now, to be fair, I don't think they realized he was going to be this good this soon. I mean, he absolutely crushed it and raked through the minors to earn his spot. And remember, you can't blame the White Sox for not drafting him because he wasn't available. I think he was taken 4th by the A's. And again, that shows, they took a guy a little bit, on a lesser signing bonus, first base. And sometimes, again, if you get a really good power crushing first baseman, I can make the exception, but also the A's have accumulated so many prospects that it made sense for them to take them. So, but at least the White Sox avoided, the potential where, let's say Montgomery hit even more home runs and outpaced, Nick in Sacramento. They wouldn't have gotten the draft pick compensation. So it's nice to see the accolades. But again, I want to see Colson Montgomery contend for MVPs. That's why I'm not like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he only got 5th place. Pitcher Shane Smith, he got a couple of votes for Rookie of the Year as well. He was also on MLB Pipeline's second team All-Rookie. And joining him on the second team All-Rookie for MLB Pipeline was Chase Mydroth, whom they listed at short. Hai-Seong Kim, he was listed at second, although Kim, I think, is like in his late 20s. I do think when international free agents, especially from Korea and Japan, come over, we really shouldn't designate them as rookies. I mean, because they've played plenty of international ball. And while, Japan is equal to 4A ball, basically, they've been pros for pretty much a very, very long time. So they're not necessarily truly rookies, especially like, when Jose Abreu, I mean, it's great that he won Rookie of the Year in 2014, but he was 27. He was a well-established international superstar. Anyways, Kyle Teal, he also was a second-team All-Rookie for MLB Pipeline. They put him at DH with the Red Sox, Carlos Narvaez at catcher, and pitcher Mike Vassell. He was listed as the reliever. So it's nice to see Mydroth and Vassell get some recognition. Teal, though, not getting a single Rookie of the Year vote, I actually think that's a bit mystifying. I think that, and for the Chicago contingent, it was Jesse Rogers and Russ Dorsey that had the votes for BBWAA for Rookie of the Year. And I think they noticed, because they live in the area, what's going on. I mean, Jesse Rogers splits his time. He mostly covers the Cubs, obviously, but he does put some effort into the White Sox, obviously. So obviously you could see them. And I think Rogers had him second, if I believe, for Colson. But, for even them, like, I get there was a lot of good rookies, but just even somebody, when Teal blowing through town, not getting a vote, that I think is a little mystifying to me, especially since like Jason Dominguez, he received a vote and he had a .6 F WAR for the Yankees, and yet Teal with a better WAR, he can't get any recognition, at least among the BBWAA. But either way, it's splitting hairs, and the threshold for rookie awards and accolades is a heck of a lot easier to reach than actually the big time recognition and awards. I mean, you can be an average player for a rookie and still get recognized because the pool to pick from is just much smaller. I mean, Kurtz deserved the unanimous AL Rookie of the Year, but that award has been also handed out to the likes of Ben Grieve and Kyle Lewis. Obviously some prestigious guys have won the award too that have gone on to great careers or are in the middle of great careers. But sometimes the threshold is obviously not as high to clear as it is for, say, MVP or Cy Young. And if this rebuild is going to produce a competitive team, it also needs to produce a couple of MVP and Cy Young contenders. I mean, at the very least, you want Colson among the top 5 for MVP voting. Maybe Kyle Teal can join them there someday. But again, catchers, I mean, unless you're blasting 60 home runs like Cal Riley, it's hard for catchers, obviously, to get the recognition that they deserve in the MVP voting. But Josh Mauer, he won an MVP with the Twins. So, yeah, you want to see those guys among the top 5, the top 10. You want to see Shane Smith getting Cy Young votes. And maybe when they arrive, Noah Schultz and Hagen Smith, those type of guys. And if your overall talent is contending for Gold Gloves and Silver Sluggers, you're likely a competitive team. That's because it means you've got elite players at certain positions, whether it's fielding or whether it's hitting. But the biggest thing is you want to see winning. And before you go all Jerry Reinsdorf is the owner on me in the comments, remember, Jose Abreu won an MVP in the short. Now, granted, it was the shortened 2020 season, but he did win the MVP. Lucas Giolito was in the Cy Young top 10 voting in 2020 and 2021. So it's possible. When those that jump into the comments about Jerry, you got to remember his role in last decade's rebuild failing was not in acquiring the talent or the core. It was he was not giving the team enough financial resources to compete and hiring Tony La Russa to be the manager. And remember, Jerry's out the door as soon as 2029. So if Chris Getson, that's still a big what if, he can still continue to acquire the talent or in the develop, the front office development staff being able to develop some of that talent that's still on the way, like Brady Montgomery. You got a chance to have a competitive team and part of the thing of having a competitive team is guys that contend for MVPs, guys that try to win the Cy Youngs, guys that win Silver Sluggers and Gold Gloves. And then you just need, Justin Ishbia to commit the financial resources to this rebuild to have a chance to do better than last decade. But the talent needs to continue to ascend and get to that level of winning bigger awards and winning more games. Well, Guardians reliever Emmanuel Clase and Luis Ortiz were charged with taking bribes to help associates win prop bets. Let's discuss where this ranks up relative to the Black Sox scandal a century ago after the break. NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets, that can be a hassle. Between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout, it's frustrating. And that's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. And I pulled up Game Time, and in just a couple taps, I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite NFL games for as low as $100. The app made it super simple. I can even see the exact view from my seats before buying. And I love zone deals too. Pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save big. Honestly, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, you can get the audio version of the show on places such as Apple or Spotify. So make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you get your audio-only podcasts. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me and maybe some hope. And also make sure to check out my written content at SouthsideSox.com and on TapSportsNet.com. Well, the 1919 White Sox throwing the World Series will always be part of franchise infamy. And it should always be the highest standard of the lowest gambling on sports can go. Like that should be, whenever you see now these gambling stings that happen and these charges among any sports, the ultimate level would be the 1919 Black Sox throwing the World Series. I mean, they literally threw away a championship out of spite, for many, many reasons. But that's what happened. So I always think then you got to compare it to throwing away a championship. And in terms of Emmanuel, Clase, and Luis Ortiz, it doesn't even come close. However, you do have to throw them out of the game for life. Just like the 8 players got thrown out back in the 20s. And that turned out to curse the White Sox for 88 years of no titles. And the reason why you got to have that standard of ban for life punishment is the key difference between MLB and WWE is that baseball's not scripted. You got to believe what you're seeing. The moment any player, coach, or umpire jeopardizes that, the consequences should be banned for life. The only exception is like how the NFL has suspended guys for, betting on other sports in team facilities. That's the other thing. You should not be, players should not be betting in the clubhouse or in the team facilities. You want to gamble on, like, if a baseball player wants to bet on a basketball game, do that on your own time away from the clubhouse and the facilities, that type of stuff. But otherwise, if you're actually like betting on baseball, I had no problem Pete Rose being banned for life. What I thought about was, though, he never got a chance to be reinstated to be in the Hall of Fame. And that was always my argument. Pete Rose should have been in the Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame is a museum. Okay? That's a different thing. He can be banned for life, but also be a Hall of Famer at the same time. Those two things, I believe, are truly separate, and I'll die on that hill. Now, obviously, Clase, maybe he could have one day gotten there, but he wasn't near the Pete Rose, but he is a star. And Ortiz, you got to ban him for life, but maybe you can give them the chance to eventually appeal for reinstatement after 5 years. Although it would be hard to trust them ever again. If I was thinking about signing him, I wouldn't trust them. And that's another thing. You can't trust these guys anymore. And that's one of the reasons why, obviously it was a shame that shoeless Joe Jackson got thrown out of the game when he, supposedly still played well and didn't understand kind of what was going on, that type of stuff. But with Ortiz and Clase being charged, this actually speaks to the larger problem that baseball and other professional sports are facing when it comes to embracing gambling money. And even though the sports books and baseball have agreed to take steps toward avoiding this problem going forward, this will still be a potential issue now that obviously gambling is legal throughout the land. Now, full disclosure, I am fully aware that FanDuel is a sponsor of this show, and it may come across as I'm defending them, but I'm not defending them because they're a sponsor. I'm actually defending the sports books because they're the ones that, having legalized gambling actually uncovers a lot of this because they have an incentive to not get ripped off. So, and they're also regulated. So that's why I have never had a problem actually with sports gambling. I don't actually have a problem with athletes if they're betting on other sports. But the thing that you got to take into account is how much money are they making? Like rookies making minimum salaries. This could lead to potential problems. So that's why you got to kind of have these consequences in place. That the consequences are banned for life. Now, the level of what Clase and Ortiz actually did, purposely throwing balls and at certain speeds, did it really affect the outcome of a game? I don't think so. Although you kind of see the White Sox rally back against Clase in that game where Mike Tauchman's hamstring gives out, and you're wondering what you mean. Obviously, that game wasn't in the indictment, but you got to wonder now when Clase was giving up leads or that, what was kind of happening? Was he trying to maybe tighten the spread? Maybe, who knows? But pitchers purposely throw balls all the time. Where the crime is obviously it's the insider information. They are purposely trying to rip off an establishment, for monetary gain. And also in Clase's case, my gosh, man, a couple $1,000. You're making millions, pal. But had they been accused of purposely giving up runs to hit certain spreads or blow the game, then clearly this is a much bigger issue when it comes to baseball issues and criminal activity. I mean, it's still criminal activity, and they've been alleged and they get a right to defend themselves, all that. So that's why on paper, it's still a lifetime ban to me, but you got to give them, say, 5 years down the road to appeal for reinstatement when it comes to this type of issue. And that's if they could both avoid prison, as they're facing some stiff evidence and up to 65 years in prison if convicted. And like I said, I mean, Clase, you're making a huge contract. Why are you taking that money? It started out, it sounds like he was trying to help some friends out in the Dominican, but then he was taking some kickbacks on this. It's like, man, you're throwing away your career for a couple of grand. Now, Ortiz making the minimum, that is where you could also get more potential instances. And even if the sports books have agreed to only take up to $200 on balls and strikes, prop bets, and not allow them to be included in parlay, this is where you can still get potential guys maybe doing these types of things because maybe they want to make a little bit more money than what they're already getting paid. Because baseball's economic problem of the younger players only making so much, that could be an incentive for some of these players wanting to make a few extra bucks, saying, the heck with it. I know I'm still making hundreds of thousands of dollars, which to us is obviously good money, but, look at the lifestyles, all that type of stuff. That's why I would just at least suggest in the next CBA, baseball seriously consider at least providing a more generous cut of the gambling revenue to the players, and I think the cut and the penalties of if you get caught is the only way to deter this activity, whether it's name, image, and likeness cuts, that type of stuff, or just, again, upping your minimum guarantees for players. I think you can kind of avoid this. But remember, sports books are regulated. They usually spot this activity, so having them around is not the problem. And again, I know FanDuel is the sponsor of the show, but I do believe that, the sports books have the incentive to uncover this corruption, to avoid getting ripped off, and they are regulated. It's the bad actors who either have that gambling addiction or someone trying to make some extra money on the side, or maybe they are, being held hostage on certain things, but they're doing these things thinking, well, they won't get caught. It's kind of that ego things. In the case of Clase and Ortiz, it was clear that they thought they wouldn't get busted, and now they have. So kind of like what happened to the 1919 Black Sox, those 8 men out, these 2 have got to be out, but maybe not for eternity. Well, I always want to make sure your voice is heard, so I got a couple of mailbag questions and comments to tackle, and that's coming up after the break. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at an even bigger payout. Keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push, and I'm always telling you about how fun it is to play FanDuel's traditional money lines, the over-unders, and the spreads. But if you want to win some big time money, or at least double or triple your cash, play FanDuel's props, parlays, or futures. So you think Chicago can ride this hot start that they've had all the way to the Central Division title? Well, that's currently at plus 1,900 the last time I checked. So they've been putting as little as like $5 on that. And if it somehow does happen, that pays out $95. Now, maybe you're more realistic and you want to build a parlay of Chicago making the play-in game and having over 40 wins this season, kind of like what they normally do. Well, that's at plus 231 the last time I checked, so there's a chance at least to double your money. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com, sign up, and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, shout out to all the everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode. Recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox, wherever they get their podcasts, as this show's available on all major podcast platforms. Well, I got a question from one listener asking if ChatGDP randomly assigning him the White Sox as a team to follow is a good thing. Right now, I actually say it sort of is, and I'll get to that. I got another asking about Trent Grisham being a replacement for Luis Robert Jr., and I got another asking about, would I trade Andrew Benintendi for Jonathan India, which I would do in a heartbeat, and I'll explain why. These are the three mailbag questions I'm going to tackle on this week's Talk You Off Tuesday. So CJ, he asked this on the YouTube comments. This is at CJ Machiavelli 2K464. I got the question up for those watching on YouTube. I just got into baseball and told ChatGPT to pick a random team, and it gave me the White Sox. Am I cooked? Well, the fan community, I've always felt the White Sox fan community, especially on social media, is great. And the team, and if you go to a game, I think it's always fun to be around fellow Sox fans. I think we have a good time at the games. The team does have an exciting group of young players. So you can basically get on the ground floor of a potential good team emerging. You just got to be prepared for a high likelihood of frustration and heartbreak because of the owner, Jerry Reinsdorf. He's still going to be the owner at least for 3 more years. The small dark cloud of the team possibly moving, which, for the record, there's these guys on like TikTok, which we are on TikTok. Check us out at Locked On White Sox. And I still see it in the YouTube comments. They're like, "Oh, we're going to move to Nashville. They're going to move to Nashville." The White Sox are not going to relocate to Nashville. I am like 99.99999% sure that will not happen, because that's a likely expansion team. I have full faith after this lockout happens, even if only a few games are lost, MLB is still going to want to expand to pick up the $2 billion expansion fee likely. And Nashville is the perfect market to have an expansion team in. So that's where they're going to probably go. They're not going to have the White Sox take away $2 billion. Now, I've always said it's always just possible. It's kind of like that dark cloud. It may just pass us because, again, Justin Ishbia and his billions, he could easily build a stadium wherever he wants in the Chicagoland area. If he wants a new stadium, he could even just build Comiskeyville around a perfectly still usable right field. But whoever gets left out of the musical chairs, that could happen. But again, you would still, I get going to your own market is, you would have it to yourself, but even splitting Chicago, even getting a quarter of Chicago fan base, a third, 2/3, I mean, not 2/3, like, 2/5, 40% is still going to be about the same as having some of these markets like Portland. So I don't think they'll possibly move, but you would have to deal with at least the headache of trolls saying that. And you got to deal with the trolls of Cubs fans, that type of stuff. You also have a history of rebuilds not working out and a history of playoff failures. And the list could go on and on. But I still stay loyal to the White Sox. But part of it is, again, is, the deep ties I have to this franchise based on my emotional connection. It was one of the few things my dad and I had growing up as kind of our thing. So that's kind of one of the stuff. So, hey, you can always ask ChatGDP for another team. But I think, I would say it can be painful, but it can also be to free you from any form of penance, as Bill Veeck once said. The next one is from Vance, and I've got his comment up on those watching on YouTube. We could have let Robert Jr. go and went and picked up Trent Grisham, who just homered 34 times in 25 is a 2-time Gold Glove Award winner. I heard somewhere Grisham was given a QO, which is a qualifying offer. Now, Grisham did get the qualifying offer from the Yankees. And even if the White Sox did say entertain signing Grisham, the Yankees are at that apron where I think you only have to forfeit your 4th-round pick. So it wouldn't be a huge give up to try to sign Trent Grisham. And I've talked about it. He might be an ideal signing, but there is some risk because this could have been just his career season because he's had plenty of sub 200 average seasons. And this was his career high in home runs. Obviously, he would still be very good defensively. I mean, if you're paying Luis Robert Jr. $20 million for his defense, why not pay Trent Grisham the same amount with the potential that he could at least hit more home runs consistently? And he could just be a late emerging player. But I think this is more of him being more ideal to the Yankees. And I know the Locked On Yankees folks, they've they've posted some of our the chats that we have among the hosts that they don't think Grisham is worth the qualifying offer. They were kind of surprised that the Yankees gave him a qualifying offer. So, if you did ever want to pursue him, which they're not, I mean, the White Sox are not going to pursue Trent Grisham in free agency. I mean, Chris Getz has pretty much come out and said they're looking for 1-year bridge guys pretty much. And I'm foreseeing probably maybe a $90 million payroll, which still gives the White Sox money to spend, but it's very limited. Again, after you put the $37.1 million to Luis Robert Jr. and Andrew Benintendi, you probably got to put at least $15 to $20 million into the rookie minimums. Do you bring back Mike Tauchman, even in a backup role at $3 million? And also Steven Wilson, that's another $4 million. So you're probably looking at about $30 million even then left over to fill 2 starting rotation spots, some bullpen help, maybe a first base upgrade or a third base upgrade. And maybe you do want to get a better starter at right field. I just don't see, I mean, again, you can move Grisham to right field too, but again, I just don't see the White Sox taking up a huge chunk of that $30 million that they're probably going to have to spend if the budget's like $90 million towards Trent Grisham. Now, I got this question from Mark. I'm a Royals fan. Would you trade Benintendi for India? So that's Jonathan India. Yeah, I would. I would do it to get Benintendi's contract off the books. That's the main reason why I would do it. I know India's glove is bad, but if you could trade out Benintendi's terrible $17.1 million deal for 2 more seasons too, for India's projected $7.4 million in ARB, I would do it in a heartbeat. And I don't care if it's one flawed player for another. And, you could play India in left field. He has played some left field. He's not ideal, but he's better than Benintendi in left. He's younger than Benintendi. And even if the White Sox had to eat some money in the deal, let's say they got to eat, $8 million per each for the next 2 seasons for Benintendi for Jonathan India, so you're looking at, let's say combine it, that's $15 million with Jonathan India's deal. You still freed up $2 million in payroll space. And with the limited money to spend, that $2 million can be used to get a better reliever in the bullpen, maybe. So you could still use that payroll flexibility and a younger player whose legs are no longer gone in left field where you can't really use Benintendi. I mean, at this point in his career, Benintendi is a DH. And in terms of like where I could only think that he has good trade value, like you could go to a team and be like, this guy would be ideal for you, is the Red Sox with how he hits to right field. But the Red Sox have plenty of DH and left and outfield options. And the Royals, though, I don't see them doing that type of deal. Although, Benintendi did hit 300 when he was with KC. So he would fit into their more bat to ball preferred lineup as they prefer more contact guys, obviously, because of Kauffman Stadium not being a huge home run park. But he's been terrible lately putting the bat on the ball, and he doesn't feel well at all. So I don't see him a couple of years older and removed from that 300 season for the Royals fitting in very nicely. But yeah, if I could get that $17 million off the books, I'd do it in a heartbeat. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On MLB Game Night. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or listen to your podcast. And I'll be back tomorrow with a discussion on how the White Sox and some other teams not pursuing Kyle Tucker is what is actually wrong with the economic model in baseball. You can leave comments about today's episode on the episode page on YouTube, via email, lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com, on X, formerly Twitter, @LockedOnSox or @ToddJDub. Also, make sure to like today's episode on YouTube or leave a 5-star review at wherever you get your podcast. Also, subscribe to the YouTube channel @LockedOnWhiteSox or wherever you get your audio-only podcast. Have a great day. Have also shout out to all the veterans out there who have served. Have a great Veterans Day for those that are do celebrate and are being honored today. And I will talk to you tomorrow.